Good evening, everybody. It's a real honor to be speaking to you as the chair of the Seattle Metropolitan Improvement District, or MID Advisory Board. We're incredibly appreciative of you taking the time to join us to hear about the MID and give us your input on how we can best move forward together. Honestly, I don't know where we would have all been over the past couple of years with all that the downtown has faced if it hadn't been for the MID and its marvelous ambassadors in their yellow vests that we see everywhere, cleaning the streets, helping pedestrians, assisting the unsheltered in getting services, shelter, or the help they need, and the increased security presence of Iron and Oak across downtown that's helping enormously in bringing back safety to the streets, enabling tourism, helping Seattleites visit their favorite haunts again, and very importantly, helping employers to bring back their employees to the office. It's getting better every day, but we have a long way to go, and the MID's partnership with Seattle government is absolutely essential in getting us where we need to be as a downtown and in keeping us there. The MID was founded in 1999 by the Downtown Seattle Association through a City of Seattle ordinance. And for more than 2 decades, investment from property owners like you within the MID boundaries, that's from Denny Way to Pioneer Square and I-5 to the waterfront, has helped provide cleaning, safety, hospitality, and downtown events, park and public space management, marketing, and more. The intent is for these services and investments to supplement and enhance, not replace, services provided by municipal government. Over the past 2 years, we've seen how the pandemic has affected our downtown, as it has done to urban centers throughout the world, and we've seen how critical it is for the private sector to be invested in the stewardship of downtowns and taking action to support their renewal. As we emerge from the pandemic, the role of business improvement districts like the MID has become more critical to revitalizing our cities and urban cores than ever. And it is absolutely essential that we have a strong partnership between the private sector, the business sector, the nonprofit sector, and government to get there. Last summer, the MID invested more than $3 million in a multifaceted recovery strategy, put on more events to draw people back to downtown, and really invested in safety patrols, cleaning shifts, and additional equipment. The reauthorization process that we're just beginning here kicks into gear over the next couple of months, with property owners receiving petitions of support. Ratepayers are going to be asked to renew a program that I'm convinced is absolutely critical to a clean and welcoming downtown and critical to recovery. So today, what we want to do is have a dialogue with you to make sure that we know what pain points you have as ratepayers and what has the greatest value to you. I look forward to hearing your thoughts, and I'll turn it over to John and Jennifer and staff.
All right, I think that's me. Welcome, and thank you everyone for joining this meeting. As I just echo all of Lisa's remarks, and I want to introduce myself quickly. I'm Jennifer Casillas, and I oversee the public realm operations and ambassador programs of the MID. And I just want to mention a couple key folks on my team who are joining the call as well. We have Stephen Walls here, Director of Cleaning Services, Michael Johnson, Director of Parks and Public Spaces, and Brian Cannon, Director of our Community Safety and Hospitality Services. So I'll just begin with a snapshot here of our current MID services. Earlier this year, we reevaluated our service mix in response to the post-pandemic needs of downtown, as the environment is always changing and evolving, and our teams need to be doing that as well, so we can react and be as impactful as possible. And our current core teams currently serving the MID include these 3 ambassador teams. The clean team, this is the team that is getting to those messes in and around the MID, including a variety of services that and snapshot is syringe removal, biohazard cleanups, graffiti removal, pressure washing, and much more. We've got our community safety and hospitality team. They provide services both on foot and on bike throughout our 280 plus blocks. And their services include concierge services, giving directions to the public, information, daily staffing in our MID managed parks and our public spaces, daily visits to ratepayer businesses, welfare checks to those in need, and also work really closely with our social services agencies to assist those in need and get them the support and care that they do need. And then we have our parks and public operations, our public realm operations team that oversees the setup and breakdown and event programming support in the parks and the public spaces that we do manage throughout the mid. Next slide, Emily, thanks. There we go. And thanks to the mid investment, we've been able to keep these teams and their significant positive impact going throughout the pandemic. So we found ourselves in an extremely fortunate position during the pandemic and collected the vast majority of the assessments. And by doing this, we could really lean into recovery efforts, which includes more cleaning and equipment. So this will allow our clean team to move more quickly and efficiently throughout the entire mid, responding to the needs that are out there. We have added security, as Lisa mentioned, a significant investment in private security to allow for more eyes on the street, support for our own team so they can complete their core services efficiently and adequately, and also added event support, ratepayer support, and public support throughout the 285 blocks. We also have added events to draw people back, giving people a reason to come back downtown. We really do want everybody, all audiences, to come back and focus on those office workers to get them back to the office, giving everybody predictable, recurring programming for all audiences, all ages, as well as bringing back events that people have really been missing. And some of those include our outdoor live concerts, happy hours in parks and public spaces, giving a reason for people to connect again together, which everybody has really been missing and craving. We've also added art installations and mural in empty storefronts and on windows. And we all know that there's a lot of empty vacant spaces out there. So trying to breathe new life into those spaces that have become neglected or vandalized and vacant. So art, pop-ups, lighting and activations in those spaces, and continuing to do that throughout. And also a regional marketing campaign was a big effort back when we were slowly coming out of this pandemic, and about this time last year, and we're still coming out of the pandemic. So we're still pushing people to come back downtown with our Love Seatown event, Love Seatown campaign out in the market in all channels, including social media, pointing people to the events, the restaurants, the retail, the arts and theater that really are uniquely Seattle, and getting people back into the downtown core and reintroducing themselves to all that we can offer. So next slide. So I kind of wanted to give everybody a, oops, sorry, lost my notes there. Back there. Okay, want to take a moment, sorry, to provide a quick snapshot of our mid-service area and some point-in-time stats to show everyone the impact that we do have in the public realm. So the mid-service area is made up of 6 downtown neighborhoods. You can see those on the map there in the color coding, 285 square blocks, and again, those ambassador teams that I mentioned earlier. So first, I'm going to kind of drill down on the clean team. The next slide, please. So this is just a before and after photo, and I shouldn't say just, this is pretty impactful, and this is one photo of many, many, many. The photo kind of speaks for itself. This is before and after an alley on 3rd Avenue between Cherry and James, and our clean team sees this, almost every morning, and by the time our workers and people are coming, tourists and such are coming back downtown, they see the photo there on the right. So without the mid, that wouldn't happen. Next slide, please. And so wanted to show you all a map of some of the services that the clean team offers. And this is just in the month of June of this year. So just last month, a few select core services provided by our clean team resulted in some pretty impressive numbers that you can see here. The amount of trash bags filled, the amount of graffiti tags removed, and the amount of syringes recovered. And each of those black dots represent the locations of those, showing that the services really are spread out through the 4 borders of the mid. Next slide, please. And to continue with some more clean team stats, because we do have a lot of them and they're pretty impressive, the amount of biohazard waste cleanup services shown here. This is something that nobody really wants to deal with or see, but we have a team out there taking care of them as fast as possible. And so again, you can read and see those numbers and look at the complementary black dots to demonstrate how much we are taking care of in just 1 month's time, and that these would be left unattended if our clean team wasn't in the field each day. So then moving on to community safety and hospitality services. This map and these stats show a variety of the actions that are that the hospitality ambassadors are out in the field completing each day. So from business visits and ratepayer assistance, again, the welfare checks, making medic and SPD calls as needed, and also providing safe walk services, which is escorting people when they want a partner to walk with from their office to their car to the bus station. A safe walk service is a service that we provide. And keep in mind, these dots on the map show the specific recorded action. This doesn't necessarily show the coverage of the teams. The coverage of the teams is the entire mid every single day. But these are the responsive actions that we have logged into our Fulcrum logging system. And on to the next. And here we go to Parks and Public Spaces. This is looking at the fiscal year last year, so July 2021 through June 2022. Our public realm operations team and ambassadors managed over 1,500 activations, events, and programs throughout the year. And that's in addition to the daily activations and amenities that are out there almost 365 days a year, with music and furniture, food trucks, games, and lighting, and all of those amenities that are out every single day. So as hopefully many of you know, we've been managing Westlake and Occidental Parks and working in Bell Street Park and others through private-public partnership with the city for over 6 years now, and the results have been extremely positive. And so we've been able to really turn these parks and public spaces around, and the teams have kept these up through the pandemic. And I think that Westlake and Occidental and other spaces were, because they were stewarded and we had people throughout the pandemic staffing those spaces, we could continue to keep them positive spaces. And we look forward to continue keeping these welcome and lively as we come out of this pandemic and make these really, assets for everybody in the city. And that concludes my portion of the presentation.
Not sure who's next.
Pick it up from here, Lisa, and good afternoon, everybody. John Scholes, the CEO of the Downtown Seattle Association, and as Lisa noted, the DSA has been the program manager of the MID since 1999, and Jen did a good job of covering a lot of the details of some of the programs that her team operates, and that our ambassadors and the services that our ambassadors provide each and every day. Out on the streets between Denny Way down through Pioneer Square and between I-5 and the waterfront. And in the few minutes that I have with you tonight, I want to just take a bit of a step back and cover budget overview and just the impact of the investments over the last several years in particular, and then a brief sort of status report on some of the economic recovery metrics that we're paying attention to within the mid and within downtown. But I would just first start just to put an exclamation point on Lisa's earlier point that the investment that you all are making as property owners downtown, whether that's hotel or office or residential, is really intended to be supplemental to city services and to municipal services that are critical to a healthy neighborhood and a healthy downtown. That's always been the proposition here. We've never intended to supplant or replace city services. And unfortunately, and I think we probably have agreement here among those on the call, I think we found ourselves in that position too many times over these last few years in particular. And I've certainly been frustrated by that reality as the leader of the entity running this program, and also as someone who lives downtown and has lived downtown for 10 years or so. We haven't seen our municipal partners holding up their end of the bargain over these last 2 or 3, difficult years in downtown Seattle. Having said that, I'm encouraged over the last couple of months around some of the actions we have seen. And We need our city leadership to step up and rebuild our police department. I'm encouraged by the announcement our mayor made yesterday around a robust recruiting and retention strategy. We need our municipal partners to step up and address the crisis of homelessness in our downtown. I'm encouraged by the regional homelessness authorities' focus on downtown Seattle and the investments they're making in outreach workers and housing and shelter and services. And the progress we've seen to deal in particular with a number of the tent encampments in downtown. A year ago, we had 131 locations of tents throughout the MID. Today, we have about 12. We still have too many people living unsheltered in alleys and in doorways, and we've got a lot of work to do, but we've made some progress. And I'm encouraged by the leadership of our city attorney and our county prosecutor, who are holding people accountable that are out hurting others downtown and harming property. We've seen some progress on that front, but again, we have a ways to go. When we look at the winter crime rate of property crime and violent crime relative to spring, we've seen a nearly 20% reduction in total crime. So it tells me that the course we're on is the right one. The increased police presence that we've seen on 3rd Avenue, the action of our city attorney and county prosecutor, the efforts to help meet the needs of people living unsheltered on the street and bring them inside are beginning to make a difference. We need to stay that course, and the city needs to continue to step up its investment in it and its action. We cannot nor should not replace their responsibility, their investment, their obligations with private sector dollars. That is not the model here. It never was, never should be. But we and other business improvement districts around the country have unfortunately found themselves in that position. And we really need to reconstitute the partnership and the model here. And I'm more optimistic today than I have been in many months, and certainly over the last couple of years, about our ability to do that. So I wanted to make that point because I think we all share a lot of frustration with, a sense of feeling abandoned in our neighborhood over these last couple of years. Whether you're a small business owner or a resident running a hotel or working downtown, I felt a sense of abandonment. And I know our ambassadors that have been out there every single day throughout a difficult period doing difficult work in an environment that's not been safe enough have also felt that. So I wanted to make note of that before I covered a couple of slides here. This first slide just gives you a sense of the distribution of assessment dollars in our most recent fiscal year. So these are actuals as we concluded our fiscal year in June, and shows you the distribution of the around $15.5 million in assessments that are collected on an annual basis from property owners within the district. As you can see, a vast majority of our investment, as directed by the Ratepayer Advisory Board, is going into core services out on the street to create a safer, cleaner, more welcoming experience for everybody. We've always seen that as a cornerstone to our ability to be a successful and thriving downtown, and those fundamentals really haven't changed, we believe, as we work to emerge and renew from this pandemic. And your investment over the last 20 years, 20 plus years since the MID was founded in 1999 and then expanded into Belltown in 2013 has been significant. These are figures of activity and outcomes just over the last 4 years or so through the pandemic. And you can see the level of action and activity, principally by our ambassador teams, which is a majority of our investment, of your investment in the services and programs of the MID. And then I wanted to highlight just a couple of stats of sort of where we stand today when we look at downtown recovery and the health of the economy and the number of folks returning and out on the street. We're comparing on a weekly basis data that we get to numbers in the same week in 2019. And we look at overall foot traffic in downtown, so looking at workers, people who live downtown, and folks visiting, we're at about 86% of what we'd expect and what we saw in 2019. A lot of that is driven by a really strong rebound of our hospitality sector. Our hotel demand, so these are hotel room nights sold relative to the same week in 2019, is at 101%. It's 101 because we've got more hotel rooms today than we had in 2019. We had the second highest hotel occupancy in the month of June in the country. Among the top 25 urban markets in the US, Seattle was number 2. Last Saturday, we had 92% occupancy. Thank you, Toronto Blue Jays fans and Portland Timbers fans who were up here for the weekend. And then our office worker visits are really not where we'd like them to be, just about 40% or normal, but we've started to see some recovery here in recent months. And since the beginning of the year, we've had an increase of about 27% in the number of folks that are showing up in their offices 3 or more days a week. So if you're in your office just 1 or 2 days, you're not captured in this number. This is telling us the number of folks 3 or more days in their office each week. We're about at the national average. We're trailing some cities in the south and east, like in Austin, who's at 65%. We're slightly ahead of some of our West Coast peers, like San Francisco and LA, or who are in the low 30s. And then our residential population is higher than it's ever been. We saw a significant rebound in 2021 and now have 104,000 people within the greater downtown, so beyond the mid boundaries, but South Lake Union down to the stadiums and First Hill to the water, 104,000 people living downtown. So I think these are all encouraging and strong numbers. You know, we shouldn't declare victory. We've got a long way to go, and I think need to continue to be laser focused on the experience and ensuring it's safe and welcoming and clean for everybody. And that is where a large majority of your investment through the MID is going through, and a ratepayer board that is helping to advise and direct that spending. And today we are engaged this summer in the process to reauthorize and renew the MID, as Lisa noted. And that's really the purpose of our conversation and engagement with you today. Kate Jonkus is supporting that process, and she'll provide a little bit more input on the timeline, the requirements as we go through this next year, which requires us to present to the city a business plan that lays out the set of investments, the service plan, the budget, the boundaries that property owners and ratepayers want to see in a reauthorized and renewed MID, and to demonstrate that there's a majority support among the total assessment that will be paid to reauthorize that plan for another term, and then to present that to City Hall and the City Council and secure majority support of the city in May of next year. And we're in the phase now of really constituting that business plan and listening to ratepayers and property owners with the goal of by September to have a business plan in place. So that's the purpose of this meeting and the other engagement opportunities that we're providing over the next several weeks as we make our way through the summer. So I'll turn it over to Kate, who will speak maybe a little bit in more detail to that timeline, and then facilitate some questions and answers for the remainder of our time together.
Great, thank you, John. If we put up the timeline slide, thank you. The timeline is laid out in legislation and by the City Council. So here's where we are. And as John mentioned, and the team, between now and September, we're doing some very intense outreach to see what people think about the future for the MID and what it should be and for the next number of years. And we're working on developing a business plan. You heard about some of the changes that we've been testing over the last couple of months, and changes that have been driven by the pandemic. So we are working on that. We have an advisory group led by Lisa, and the MID board will be looking at this in August and September. In September, after we get an approved business plan by both the MID ratepayer board and then the DSA board, we'll go to petition process. Every ratepayer in the MID will have an opportunity to vote on whether they are supportive of the new business plan or not. Everyone will get something in the mail, and as many as that we can contact will be sent something electronically. We want to have the number of petitions that we need in order to renew the mid early in 2023, and we will submit it to City Council then. And there's a fairly extensive review process with the city, both in departments and then council. And we anticipate that the City Council will be taking up the review of the mid proposal in next May of 2023, which includes a public hearing and various meetings of City Council committees, and then to the entire City Council. We are hoping that we'll have a very successful City Council process, that the mayor will sign the new mid in June, because the current mid goes out of business at the end of June of 2023. So we want to start the new mid in July of 2023, so we don't have any gaps in service. So that is the process, and you will be able to follow that on the mid websites. And so now I want to talk to you a little bit about some opportunities for information and outreach before we get to Q&A. The team is really working on the mid website to have a lot of information about what the mid does. We have a survey on the website, and that you can take right here. And Emily, if you put that in the chat, that would be great, about the services and what things you think are needed and what you think about the current services. And then we have some great questions I've been watching in the chat, and we will do as many of those in this session as we can. And if we don't get to you, we have your name, we'll track you down to give you an answer. And then we have an email address that's here and will also be on the site. Please email us if you have any questions or comments, and we will absolutely look and respond to every single one of them. We are going to have another public meeting in early October to talk about what the mid board and the ratepayer board have designed as a business plan, to let you know what will be happening next and what the proposal for the mid for the next number of years looks like. And so with that, I think we'll go to chat, and I'm just going to take the chat that came in order. We had some great questions, and I will give the questions, and then I will look on the team to respond to them. So let me go back to the beginning of the questions. Thank you. Okay, so Jennifer said, I didn't know about and haven't seen any security. When did it start, and where are they focused?
I can jump in with that, and then I will pass it over to Brian Cannon as well to add more context. We have had security in the parks we've managed since we began the partnership with the city, which has been several years. A few months ago, we increased this presence to include the entire mid, and that was obviously for a variety of reasons coming out of the pandemic and other factors outside of our control, security for our own ambassadors, as well as ratepayers. They're focused on particular routes and areas that we consider hotspots, trouble spots, areas of concern. They're always being reevaluated as those areas are always changing. So the Iron and Oak officers do move around throughout the mid to be responsive to the areas that need that extra attention. But Brian, you may be able to add a little bit more context to that.
Yeah, I can jump in with a little bit more. I do want to stress that our Iron and Oak security are not actually replacements for SPD. I know that's a question we get, and I know there were a few questions basically about SPD or if we're supplementing those services. Iron and Oak is acting as an extra layer of eyes and ears, protection, and uniform presence out there. As Jen mentioned, they focused in two different ways. One, in the mornings, we pair them with our staff so that we can clean in certain areas where in the past we've had issues. Certain areas of 3rd Avenue last year, we would have a hard time getting our clean team into certain blocks. Pairing with Iron and Oak, we're able to go in, have that presence, have the extra situational awareness, and get those blocks taken care of. Again, with the added SPD presence along 3rd Avenue, there has been a great improvement in that area. And then the other way, as Jen mentioned, we have certain hotspot areas or hotspot routes. Again, a lot of these are along 3rd Avenue. That said, if somebody does need to make a request, they can call our line 206-441-3303. And that's the number for all of our ambassador or security services. And they can make a request directly through our dispatch.
Thank you. And since you just said that, later on in the chat, we had a request to do those refrigerator magnets again with the mid telephone number, which I always thought were great. I've had one of those for years. So we have another question from Lizbeth. Regarding safety, are you considering preventative activities to eliminate the cleanup? For example, at Westlake, the light boxes that were used for tree lights are a hub for drug users to charge their phones. Why are these boxes locked to deter this activity?
Such a great question. I'll take that one too, about Westlake specifically, and a lot of the electric boxes throughout parks that are connected to the trees. Yes, they are a magnet, speaking of magnets, for some of this negative activity. We know it, we all see it for charging phones and doing other negative behavior. We have tried, and just gonna put that out there, we have tried countless types of boxes and covers for these, for the electric boxes, and the people who want to get into the power figure out a way to get into the power. So that's one, you know, we will continue to try, as well as working with the city, working with Parks and Rec. The light boxes in the parks are owned by Parks and Recreation. We work with them to try to, you know, again, create something that is foolproof, and upgrade the system so we can turn on and off power as needed, or elevate the boxes. All of these suggestions have been raised to the city, and we'll continue to do that. We have sometimes just turned off complete strips of power, and we see an automatic change. The problem is it turns off all the power, and other activations and events and programming and lighting needs the power. So I hear you, I'm with you, and we'll continue to work with the city for infrastructure improvements to remedy that.
This is a huge discussion nationally with parks, and I think the solution is underground, but it costs some money to do. But,
Yeah.
Good to keep on that. Joe has a follow-up question on the security, and probably for Brian, this is you. You talked about, he asked what type of added security does the MID provide, and you talked about Iron and Oak, but he says, what time do they operate? And then he notes that his building was tagged 12 times in the last 7 months. And Joe, if you want to put in the chat what address that was, then we can definitely talk to you about that. So Brian, do you want to talk about times of day, or Jen, that the Iron and Oak works?
They work largely the same hours that our safety team operates. 7:30, well, they actually come on at 6 in the morning with our clean team, and they operate until 9 o'clock at night. And that's one of the challenges. When it comes down to buildings being tagged, a lot of that activity is happening overnight. For some people, unfortunately, it can be a bit of a sport to try and go in overnight, hit certain areas. And that, I'll be blunt, it's a challenge to be preventative with that.
And I don't know if it'll make you feel any better, but the mayor is passionate about getting rid of graffiti. I've heard him speak several times about this. He's a little over the top on it, which is good for us. So Melissa has a question, follow up on the security. She asked, does the security respond to calls, or is it just on patrol?
They do respond to calls. I would absolutely stress, if you're seeing criminal activity, make that 911 call. That does require a police response. If you're seeing a situation where, say, there's somebody who might be in distress, who might need a welfare check, that could be our safety ambassadors responding. That could be Iron and Oak responding. I did see a question regarding the Safe Walk program, where we can have a safety ambassador or an Iron and Oak officer meet with someone, which again is another one of those services. Another service that Iron and Oak can respond to is if you have somebody inside of a store or inside of a property, if that person is committing a crime other than they shouldn't be there, again, that's a 911 call. But they can respond to those situations, talk to that person, and help get them out of the store. So yes, absolutely, again, call that number, 206-441-3303. And I have to be honest, I'm usually a broken record when it comes to that number, so you might hear that a lot from me.
So a little bit follow up on that, some advice. Mark asks, he says, public safety is paramount. And when I see a distressed individual or people openly using drugs, can the MID be a resource instead of calling 911? What should someone do when they see someone openly using drugs? That's,
to be incredibly blunt, a bit of a difficult situation. What I would say is if you're seeing drug dealing, again, that's the 911 call. If you're seeing somebody who is in distress, you can absolutely call us. While we can't stop somebody from using drugs, we can connect with somebody. Part of the job of both Iron and Oak and our safety ambassadors is to build relationships with people over time. Quite often, we are connecting with people, and we know people who are living on the streets, who are dealing with addiction and mental health issues. We might actually know that person. So our ambassador might be able to show up, have a conversation with that person, might be able to offer them resources or meet some other need in the moment. To be able to shift that. And it can be a situation where we might know that person's case manager, where we can go out, meet with that person, and give that information to their case manager to be able to follow up with that person. In those situations, you can absolutely give us a call.
So we have a follow-up question. All the things we've been talking about, have the MID thought about preventative measures? Have you considered focusing your efforts on preventing graffiti, trash, etc.? You're good at responding to it.
I can jump in a little bit. This is probably anybody can jump in on this. It's incredibly difficult to prevent some of the graffiti from happening. Like Brian mentioned, it's a sport, it's a competition, it's in some regard. But some of the art, murals, activation, lighting, some of those positive interventions and positive improvements really do deter. There is in some spaces a regard for that and a respect for that. And so while a board, an empty board up on a window is prime for graffiti, if we have employed an artist to do something thoughtful on that board, a lot of times it does not get tagged as much potentially as it would have. And we always do come in and try to fix the tag if it does happen on any of the art. So that's one positive intervention that we try to do to intercept the negative activity.
And if I recall, rigorously taking off the graffiti does discourage over time.
Yes.
So Haley's asked, and I think, Brian, this gives you an opportunity to say the phone number again. Who do we contact for safe walk services? And let me add, Haley, a little bit. How much in advance do you need to do that?
That's a good question. We generally, just to make it easier, we ask people call about 30 minutes in advance. That said, if you find yourself in a situation where you just need it now, sorry, sirens in the background, feel free to go ahead and give a call. And I do see a question down at the bottom. What is our typical response time? Be it clean or safe, we try and respond within 15 to 20 minutes.
Okay, great. So switching gears a little bit, this is a great question because I know a number of bids in the Northeast and the Northern Midwest that do this. Has the MID considered adding sidewalks, ramp de-icing, or snow removal in the winter when there aren't leaves to pick up and the team likely has more time? It would be so beneficial.
I can jump in a little bit, and then I'm going to see if Stephen wants to add any to that, and or Brian or Michael. A little bit, yes. We have seen snow and ice, I'm going to say a little bit more frequently in the downtown core the past few years. And we do have a small but mighty closet of equipment for snow removal, de-icer, shoe, I can't think of the name, the tracks that you put on shoes. So there's some grip and some spikes, but it is something, yes, it is something that we are looking into adding. It's difficult with the hills in our downtown, but if it's difficult for the ambassador, it's also difficult for the general public. So something we're looking into a little bit more and probably need to address as it becomes a little bit more normal. I don't know, Stephen, it's usually the clean team who is here early in the morning helping with that, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, we just developed a policy just last year to provide some de-icing in high pedestrian where there's a lot of foot traffic. It seems to be hit or miss depending on if the ability for the ambassadors to get in. As we know, the metro system is probably not the best when there's snow and the highways are impacted. And so whatever staff we have available, we will send them out and to deploy them in areas where there's a lot of foot traffic.
Okay, thank you. So we have a really interesting question from Elizabeth on safety. She said, with the additional investment in safety staff, what's the strategy in collaboration with SPD? Are they intended to replace the 400 officers we have lost?
I can jump in on that. To be clear, it's not intended to replace the 400 officers. That's when it comes down to it, law enforcement is not a gap that we can directly fill. We do invest in $250,000 worth of SPD overtime shifts each year, and that is in addition to their normal shifts. And I do know that when they're down staffing as they are, that does create a situation where we are effectively backfilling shifts that they couldn't otherwise staff. We do regularly meet with Captain Steve Strand, Lieutenant Brown of the West Precinct, and we do work in other ways as well. We partner with Barb Biondo, who is the Crime Prevention Coordinator for the West Precinct. Working with her, we'll go out and do site visits. She'll often make CEPTED recommendations. So there are different ways that we are working with SPD, and we're often in communication with them about the issues that we are seeing on the street.
I have just a note, Candace asked if we could post the recording, and that will be posted on the website if you want to see the slides subsequently and look at some of the data. So our next question is, does the MID have any future plans to reduce the amount of graffiti? And I know you take off a lot of graffiti on a regular basis, and do you have any plans to either increase or change how you're dealing with that?
The silence means no active plans at the moment, other than trying to deter it by doing positive interventions, positive interaction, or positive interruptions as in art and lighting and activation, as well as just getting at it as fast as we can, which we've said a couple times here, really does deter. If you get out there and we take care of it over and over, you know, the folks who are doing it will hopefully move along. But that's my answer to that one.
Jen, if you also, I think it's a common misconception that the graffiti we see as gang graffiti, and usually it's not. Is that still the case?
I think that's the case. Others may have a different or more information on that. To me, most of the graffiti is just nuisance graffiti from people who have nothing better to do at 3 a.m. in the morning.
I would say that's correct. Most of it is nuisance, although there's very limited gang graffiti. And the other thing I will also add to that is that majority of the locations where we find the bulk of the graffiti are near encampments. And so that's just so when we're talking about how can we prevent it, rest assured, if you have any encampments near your building or residence or whatever, possibilities are that graffiti is on the rise. So if we can, you know, limit that, that is the ultimate deterrent to that. And also, you know, as Jen has mentioned, the best prevention is to eradicate it as fast as possible.
And one other thing to note is that I'm sure many of us noticed, there's a lot of graffiti along the highways or I-5, and we can't, you know, in areas outside of the MID that we can't get to, but working in partnership with agencies that can, and encouraging them and their teams to get to that graffiti as well. All the portals into the city are also a reflection of the city as people come in and out. So that is something we can help to partner with and help deter it from happening right in the entrances and exits as well.
And I have one more plug, if I will. Prior to the pandemic, our business has always been within the public right of way. But since we realized that many of the properties was hurting and didn't necessarily have the capacity to provide those graffiti removal services, we decided to take that responsibility on. So if you have any graffiti, please call our office at 206-441-3303.
Great, thank you, Stephen. A good benefit to the ratepayers. So our next question from Kevin is, what preventative strategies are being done to address the open air drug use that occurs on sidewalks and in alley areas? Overdoses have become common in the alley behind our sites. Is there any collaboration with SPD on this one? And I would also say with other organizations.
Happy to speak to that, Kate. I mean, I think this this again is an area where we need city action and city investment, right? You know, for too long, we've had active open drug markets, drug dealing, retail theft markets that have been sort of operated and taking place in plain sight. And we all see it. We all know what's going on. It impacts local retailers. That we have to clean up the mess. people are overdosing. And too often those situations result in people pulling out guns and shooting at each other. And we saw a number of those incidents last year, particularly along 3rd Avenue. So we need continued action from the police department to break up those markets, from our city attorney and prosecutor to hold accountable those folks that are behind that activity, and to prosecute folks that are dealing and selling and stealing and running organized retail theft that's costing small businesses millions of dollars each year. And I think we've seen some progress over the last several months to break up some of that activity. No doubt we still see dealing and use downtown, but this is an area where we need continued action and investment by our municipal partners.
And all of you who are voters on here need to ask good questions of people who are coming into elected positions in the city. Okay, so back to business. Jennifer's asked, this is a good question, Jennifer, and a good reminder to the team. Is it possible to get regular communications via email and maybe regular meetings from MID regarding what services have been added and what's in place? Like reminders about pressure washing of sidewalk availability, how to utilize them, and what some of the other services are exactly. I know some businesses around my area don't have any idea and don't use them. So if someone could talk about the communications you're doing and respond to Jennifer's question.
Sure, I can take that. I'm Sally Wright. I have the communications and marketing team at DSA. What I can tell you is that there is a ton of information available online, and I think we put the link in there, so you can go to the Downtown Seattle Association.org website, and there's information that's updated about all of the services that are provided, how to submit requests, contact information, all of that. And there's also a microsite that you can link off from on that site called knowyourbia.com, and that's a little more in-depth information about assessments and so forth. But all the information is on the website. We've got information up on Renewal as well, and we are actually intending to relaunch a newsletter aimed at mid-rate payers, hopefully here in July, in response to some of these kinds of questions and the desire for more frequent information. So you can hopefully be watching for that soon here in the next few weeks, and that will go to folks via email. So if you are not yet receiving, or you're not sure you're receiving, there's an opportunity on the website to go and put your name and contact information in and choose the things that you'd like to subscribe to receive from us.
Thanks, that's great. I think that answers Jennifer's question was about proactive communication. You never can do too much of that, and particularly now. So thank you, that was a good question. So we have a question from Melissa, and this also is a good one because there are so many links between cleaning and safety. She asked, how do you discern between cleaning and safety efforts? Because the cleaning also often achieves a safety goal, and the safety often achieves a cleaning goal. Jen, I think this is you.
Yeah, I'm thinking, and that's a great question. We do have core services, and I outlined some of those in my quick presentation that our clean team does, and we have core services that our community hospitality and safety services does, and our public realm operations team, but we are certainly constantly collaborating and aligned. And we are all working with the same framework of keeping downtown clean, clear, and cared for. And no matter what you may see in front of you, if you, an ambassador, or anyone for that matter, from the MID, sees something that they can take care of, we are to take care of that within reason and within training and within the proper tools. So they definitely are interconnected and can't be separated. And like Brian kind of mentioned with the Safe Walk services, any ambassador can do that. It doesn't have to be a community hospitality and safety ambassador. And picking up a scooter or cleaning something more simple, any ambassador can do that. And really treating the public realm as our own space and treating it like our own home and taking care of it in that way. So there are some that are unique. Cleaning up biohazard waste is a unique training, skill, and expertise that we wouldn't just have everybody take care of and do. But there's definitely a lot of overlap and a lot of services that all of us can do that are clean, safe, and keeping the public space vibrant. I don't know if that's a super hard, great answer, but
that's because we were coordinated in the same office.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I just went past the request for the mid refrigerator magnet again. So the next question from Steve is about John talked about this difficult conundrum that is always there. Many mid-ratepayer board meetings have reiterated for years that city services has not been adequate, starting long before the pandemic and related to more than police availability and outreach, help with housing and mental health. Those latter items are now under the purview of the new regional homeless agency. How would the mid-BIA renewal adjust to the reality of what the city is actually willing to and able to provide?
Well, I think we can't accept what they've been providing as what they actually can provide, because they can and should provide much more. And I think it's up to all of us, and it's certainly as a priority of our organization through this renewal and the advocacy work that's led by Kylie Rolfe on our team, who's with us tonight, to ensure that that's the case. We need the city to rebuild the police department. We need the city to have a robust plan to meet the needs of the 800 or so folks that are living unsheltered in the greater downtown. We need the county to be holding accountable and prosecuting and charging individuals that are hurting and harming others downtown. So I don't think we can accept what we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years as what the city's actually able to do or what the reality is. And there's other areas we need the city to step up as well, just basic maintenance of the public right-of-way and the parks that we manage. So that's a core part of our focus in this renewal, like as I started with, is to really restore that partnership. And again, I'm more encouraged today than I've been in quite some time, because I think we have city leaders that are committed to those things. But it's not going to be easy, and I think your voice in these efforts is going to be really, really important. I think the private sector can come together through this process in this mid-renewal and say, hey, here's what we're willing to continue to do and what we're willing to continue to invest. And here's where we need you to step up, city. And we have an opportunity to sort of reconstitute this partnership that's been a really successful one over the last 20 years, and driving a lot of investment in downtown and growth and increases in value, et cetera. But we can't accept what we've seen over the last 2 years as any type of normal. We need to redefine the partnership.
And we are getting close to the end, and I can tell we're not going to get through all of these great questions. I'll do a couple more before I turn it back to Lisa. And Lisa will put up the email address where you can follow up, and we will keep the chat and try to follow up with all the questions that did not get answered tonight. So let me take a couple more. Valerie had a great question. I think this is for you, John, to clarify that only property owners receive the petition, and some residents receive the petition, condo owners, and renters, their owner will. So if you clarify who gets and who can sign.
Yeah, so owners of property downtown for office and hospitality, for residential, if you're in a condo building, if that petition will go to the HOA president. In most cases, the dues are not paid are not billed to individual owners. They're billed to the HOA, and then for apartments to the underlying owner slash manager of the apartment. So there's about 1,400 ratepayers within the MID that will receive petitions. And there's much more information on the current assessment formula, the boundaries, how it all works, the rates at knowyourbia.com. I don't know if that link was already posted, but if it hasn't been, Emily can add that to the chat. And that really covers the nuts and bolts of how the current business plan and the current mid is structured.
So I have a question from Jennifer. She said, I never see anyone besides the clean team in our area. So how do we get more presence? And if Jennifer, we don't already have your email, if you want to send us an email, put your email in the chat, we would be happy. I'm sure the team would be happy to send you the schedule and contact you about when the services is in your neighborhood. Okay, maybe take one more before I turn it back to Lisa. I think we clarified that the ambassadors remove graffiti. Stephen, is there anything else you want to add to that, you've clarified that now we are doing it on some private property as well as public.
No, other than it's an uphill battle. We spend quite a bit of resources trying to stay on top of it. And ever since we made the announcement and let the public know that this is what we're doing, they've been taking advantage of the opportunity. And I think it's a great resource and services that we provide, and we're happy to do so.
All right, and Sabrina, I'm sorry, I think this is going to be the last question we can do. Sabrina, you're the one who's last. She's is really hoping to expand Iron and Oak services into the evening. In addition to graffiti, many other negative activities happen after 9 p.m.
I would just note, Kate, I mean, that's the type of feedback that we're really looking for in these venues. In the survey that we have out, you know, what are the priorities of ratepayers as we look ahead to the next mid and service plan and the business plan. And these are the things we're listening for: is hours of service, types of service, levels of service, activation of additional public spaces to mitigate and prevent negative activity. So that feedback, in addition to everything else that's been shared, both through the input and your questions, has really been helpful tonight. And I hope you'll also take advantage of the email address that was provided in the survey link as well.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And as I said, if we didn't answer your chat, the team will try to respond back to you. I'm going to turn it back to Lisa to close us out.
Thanks, Kate. This has been great. And I think the excellent questions are helpful because it helps the mid know how best to put out information that's useful to people and that is answering questions that people care about. So hugely important and helpful. And thanks for the time to do it and for leaning in. Also, please, if thoughts occur to you, please shoot emails so that they are captured and we can keep the dialogue going, which is the whole point here, because really the mid is entirely here to serve the ratepayers and to serve the well-being of the city, and tries very hard to do that. So thanks everybody. Thanks to this amazing team at MID and DSA that make all this happen. And please do stay in touch.